Howdy, Bob Coppage here with BizTech Twists, and today we have a guest. Well, we don't have a guest, it's me. Okay, so, but here's what we're doing. What we're going to be doing is what we're doing on all the other episodes as well, and that is that we're going to be talking about a particular topic in business technology or whatever, and then we're going to add a little bit of a twist to it. And today I want to talk about me. That's right. Is anyone still listening to this thing? Probably not. Yeah. Actually, what I want to talk about is being an author. Now, I've actually written 3 books. All of them are IT, and all of them are Amazon bestsellers. Oh, now you're all listening a little closer, aren't you? Because Amazon and bestseller. Wow. But we're actually going to talk about what I did, how I went through it, and why being an Amazon bestseller really isn't that big of a deal. So let's talk. First of all, when you write book, I think one of the most important things you need to do is you need to understand the answer to 2 very simple questions. Number 1 is, what are you looking to get out of this book? And your answer could be, I'm looking to make a lot of money. Your answer could be, you're looking to tell your story. You're looking to brand yourself. You're looking, whatever. But what is the goal? What are you looking to get out of writing this book? And then the second is, what do you want, or who do you want this book to be written for? In other words, who's really going to get the most value out of it? If you answer those 2 questions accurately and, more importantly, honestly, it's going to be so much easier for you to figure out what to put in and what to leave out, which is really critical because it's real easy to write a whole lot of junk. And I'll tell you how. The other thing is that you also need to know that most authors don't get rich. And by the way, I'm talking primarily about nonfiction books. And actually, it's a secondary value that you get out of the book. So without further ado, why did I write my books? I wrote my books because I wanted to be a differentiator, or I wanted the books to be a differentiator when I am, as a managed service provider, talking to potential clients about providing them IT services. And if I'm sitting in a room with 5 other managed service providers who are all saying we want to do their services, what makes my proposal different? And I figured I'll write a book. And who am I going to write the book for? Well, when I'm talking to potential clients, those are usually CEOs of small, medium businesses. And a lot of them really aren't interested in becoming experts in IT. So I want this to be a differentiator, and I also want to communicate effectively to CEOs and business management who don't want to become geeks. Those 2 facts made it so much easier for me to decide what needs to be put into the books. Now, the first book we're going to talk about is A CEO Survival Guide to Information Technology, which is actually available on Amazon, and also it's available on Audible in my voice. Yeah, that just ended all interest. But what I decided to do is I really didn't know how to write a book. And I'm going to give you some hints on how to do it. I hired a coach to start with, and I don't necessarily think you need that. But here's the process that I have gone through, either with help or without help, for all 3 books. Is, first of all, what is the goal and objective of the book? That is going to help me and help my audience. In this particular case, for my first book, CEO's Survival Guide to Information Technology, my goal is I wanted to communicate IT concepts to CEOs without making them become geeks. Okay, CEOs, in a lot of cases, they don't want to know anything about IT, but they have to. They have to understand certain concepts about security, about backup and recovery, about productivity, about the cloud, so on and so forth. But it has to be explained to them. So that's my goal. That's what I want to do. Then, what do I want to do? I want to break it down into sections. And the sections can be backup, business continuity, disaster recovery, security, productivity, so on and so forth. And then for each one of those sections, what are half a dozen questions that you're looking to answer? You'll notice I didn't say what are ideas that you're trying to come across, because that's your perspective. What are the questions that you often get asked by this audience, assuming that you already have a guide or already have experience with this audience? What are the questions they ask you? And put down those questions. Then you start framing what your answers are going to be. Now, notice what we just did. We just put together what is the overall goal and objective for the book. What are we aiming for? What's the achievement, the thing we're looking to achieve? And then we broke it down into, wait for it, chapters of each of the books. So here are the topics that we want to cover. And then for each of the chapters, we then broke it down into sections, those sections being the questions that were frequently asked about those topics. And then really what's left is, and boy, am I simplifying this, is we then have to answer those questions in a fixed narrative. Now, you'll notice I'm not making a textbook. I'm not making a reference book. I'm not making fiction. I'm basically writing a book that educates a reader. And because I chose to go about it that way, that means I did not have to have all sorts of charts and graphs. I didn't need to necessarily have all sorts of data or specific numbers or the like. I am basically talking about an anecdotal narrative. And the reason being is because that's the message and the style of message that I want to convey. Because I'm talking to CEOs who don't want to know, who don't want to become geeks, I have to walk it back from a technology standpoint, and I have to make it more relationship and more just anecdotal as far as this is what you need to know and this is why and this is roughly what it needs to be. And because I did that, that actually makes it easier. Now, in my case, and possibly with yours as well, I also do a lot of presentations, and I've done a lot of videos, and I've done a lot of webinars on these topics. So I was able to pull from all of that information, whether it be PowerPoint presentations, notes, blog articles, YouTube videos, and the like. You probably have more information available to you than you think you do. So think about it for a minute when you go through this process, and you basically start with again, what is it you want to get out of this book? Who is this book written for? And then what are the topics that you want to cover? Start with that and then do an inventory. Go over the materials that you or your organization, depending on who's overall the author of this book, have created that deals with these topics. And you also, depending upon your relationship, you may have vendors who have created marketing materials for you if you're reselling product that you can use. Obviously, you don't want to copy and paste. And you want to have this in your voice. So pull all this stuff together and then literally assign them to those chapters and to those questions that you're going to be answering. And then, now I hate to say it, it becomes your start writing. And believe me, if you go this route, you're going to have a story that you can tell if you actually know the story. So it helps tremendously if you spend some time. If you're not, in my case, the CEO Survival Guide, I've been talking to CEOs for 40, 50 years because I'm old. So I already knew the story. I knew the narrative. I knew the hills and mountains. I knew what kind of things I wanted to cover. In your case, you may not as much, but draw on those experiences that you do have, assuming that you're some form of content expert. By the way, content expert does not mean you are the content expert. You are a content expert. And don't undersell yourself on this. So to go through this process is actually a shortcut, if you will. Now, why am I making it a shortcut? Because I'm not looking for the Nobel Prize or Pulitzer Prize. I'm not looking for New York Times bestseller. I'm not looking for, to become rich by selling the book. I'm looking for it as a differentiator. So I am willing to be, I don't want to use the word sloppy because I spent a lot of time on this book, but I am looking for it to be good enough. So you go through and you start telling the story. You take a look at the chapters. You take a look at the questions in the chapters. You start looking at the materials you've gathered, and you then start building the narrative. Don't worry about it being a perfect narrative because quite honestly, My suspicion is you won't know what the narrative actually is until you get about a third of the way through. Then you're going to find a cadence. You're going to find what is a natural voice if that's what you want to go for. Now, me, I go for authenticity. I want someone to say, yeah, when I read that, I heard your voice, Coppage, and say that without, a therapist in the room. So I was able to go for that authenticity by basically saying, I want this to be as if I was presenting it. So there are some lame jokes. There are some callbacks. There are some nuances, a lot of metaphors, and a lot of storytelling. Your mileage may vary, but be honest to yourself because that's going to be the easiest way you're going to be able to do it. Go through it. Go through it a couple of times. When you read those sections, are you answering the questions? If you're not answering the question, is it because the material's not aimed at that question, or is it because it's a bad question? Be brutally honest, but also be simple. Because the whole concept of sections, questions, answers, it works. It's very, very simple. Now, if you're willing to spend years crafting War and Peace, hey, go for it. In which case, don't pay attention to me. I'm talking about a way to create one relatively quickly that is still a worthy book. It took me about a year working with the coaching and going through this process to write my first book, A CEO's Survival Guide to Information Technology. The next year, Simplex-IT was doing a lot of co-managed IT services, or sometimes called co-mits. And actually in our industry, I was one of the first people to actually formalize and standardize a marketing plan, a sales plan, a process plan to do that for our clientele. And I ended up speaking at a number of conferences, asked to do a bunch of webinars, all that kind of good stuff. And I decided that since I had such a strategic advantage against my competitors, that it would make sense if I wrote a book and told them all how to do it. Yeah, I'm not a very bright person in a lot of ways. But anyway, so that came to my second book, The MSP's Survival Guide to Co-Managed IT Services. All right. It too is an Amazon bestseller. Again, spoiler alert, I'm going to tell you why that's not a big deal later on. I did the same thing, but in this case, I'd already done it once. Now, what's the point of doing it? Why did I write the book? Let's go back to those. Why did I write the book? Because I wanted to cement my place as the thought leader in our industry on co-managed IT services. I can say mission accomplished.
Are you fed up with reactive IT providers who take too long to respond, let problems fester, and nickel and dime you for every little thing? Say goodbye to those frustrations by choosing Simplex-IT, home of Amazon's best-selling author and BizTech Twist host Bob Coppage. As Northeast Ohio's friendly neighborhood MSP, Simplex-IT has been providing top-notch managed and co-managed IT services since 2007, supporting hundreds of clients locally and across the United States. With a managed service provider like Simplex-IT, you'll benefit from proactive maintenance, 24/7 monitoring, and streamlined technology that will help you grow your business. Visit simplex-it.com for more information and to start experiencing stress-free IT today.
So who am I writing it for? I'm writing it for managed service providers who want to get into that market. Because historically, the managed service provider industry was we want to replace your internal IT people. We can do it better, cheaper, faster, stronger. So fire them and hire us. And we basically are saying, hey, we want your organization to have strong and healthy IT. Please don't make those initials out. But that's what we want to do. And if you have a working IT department, or if you are part of the working IT department, we can partner with you. And together we can be even more productive. And that's resonated. We absolutely still sell. Over half of our clients are traditional pure managed services where there either is no internal IT or we replace them. But we've got nearly half of co-managed. And we've made a lot of friends along the way, other managed service providers trying to implement. So again, one, I want to cement my place as a thought leader regarding co-managed IT services. And the second is we want to help MSPs develop their own co-managed practice. So that's what we want to do. Well, there's all sorts of questions. What are the various models? What are the deliveries? What are the services? What are the good points or bad points? So I was able to break those down and then break down into the chapters and then break the chapters down into individual questions. And this book took me 4 months to write. I was getting better at it. And by the way, when I say 4 months to write, we're basically talking about 12 to 15 hours a week, maybe. By the way, I should also mention that the co-managed book has roughly 200 pages and the MSP survival guide has roughly 150 pages. Okay. So it took me about 4 months to write this book. By the way, I ended up outsourcing the cover design and the final formatting. And also I did hire editors to read the books, as well as my wife, Julie, who is tougher than any editor, and to, look for obvious mistakes and the like. So that one, and this book is only available on Amazon. But then I realized that I needed another book because, remember, I wrote my first book for the CEOs and I wrote my second book for the MSPs, but my third book, because I'm talking to internal IT people who, when they hear the term MSP, they think automatically I'm trying to take their job. So I decided what should have been my second book all along, I'm going to write a book for them explaining the model, explaining why co-managed IT is not a threat to their employment. And I actually spent more time worrying about the title than I was worrying about the book itself, which is really, in retrospect, kind of stupid. But finally somebody, because I kept on going, I don't want their job, but I need to communicate it to them. I don't want them to think that I'm trying to take their job. But how do I, finally somebody said, Bob, why don't you just call it, I don't want your job. Is co-managed IT services the right fit for you? And yep, that's what worked. And this book is much shorter. It is only about 56 pages. And that one, I followed the exact same process, and I could actually take some of the stuff out of the MSP survival book and put it into the I don't want your job book. And that one only took me about 2 months. So in all three of these books, I have been able to actually cut the time down it takes. Granted, the number of pages has also gone down, but I've been able to cut it down and now was able to turn that around in just a couple of months. And right now I'm sitting on 3 Amazon best-selling books. Again, spoiler alert, no big deal. That I'm able to sell, but I'm also able to use for marketing tools and a differentiator. So I can talk to an internal IT person and say, hey, would love to talk to you about helping you partner with your IT. They're looking at me with weird eyes and saying, I don't trust you. And I can say, look, I'm not here to take your job. Oh, yeah, right. Of course you're not. I actually have a book titled that. And that's a deal breaker. Excuse me, a deal changer, not a deal breaker. Deal breakers are bad. But it basically gives me something that I can hand to them that actually proves it. And I can actually say that I have written the only 2 books on co-managed IT services. And this has helped me very, very successfully. Now, let's talk about Amazon bestsellers and how cool I am. Well, here's roughly speaking, and Amazon doesn't go, and by the way, this may sound sinister or sneaky or whatever. It just is what it is. Amazon has and Amazon does not publicize all of this sort of stuff, and they very well may be changing it here, there, and anywhere. But Amazon has 2 types of bestseller categories, definitions, and they are for their both topics. When you publish a book, there are topics and subtopics, and you can choose up to 3 topic, subtopic categories to put your one book in. Okay. And they have 2 types of bestsellers. One are all-time bestseller for that particular topic, subtopic category. And guess what? None of my books are all-time bestsellers for any topic or subtopic category in Amazon. But the second is new pieces, best-selling new items or new editions. That's a different story. So what people suggest for you to do is when you sell your book, when you put your book up on Amazon, which is, by the way, very, very simple, very easy to do, you basically wait and you come up with a date and time and you contact all of your friends and all of your family. I have none of the few or none of the first and few of the second who are willing to help me on something like this, and you tell them all to go and buy your book on Amazon at the same date and time. And then during that same date and time, you go to Amazon and you constantly hit refresh on the page describing your book. And if you sell enough books within a certain period of time that Amazon does not share, it will show up as an Amazon bestseller. Okay? And then once you're not, that goes away. Amazon does not record that. They do not share that. They don't do anything. So you have to just basically say, yep, I'm an Amazon bestseller, and you have a screenshot to prove it. Now, the first time funny story with the CEO Survival Guide, I actually wanted to give a copy to all of our clients. And so I was all set to buy, 100 copies or so. And then that would help me get on the bestseller list, because I'm not going to tell my friends and family to go buy the book. Come on. But then I found out that if I did that purchasing of 100 books would count as one purchase. Oh. So what I did was I went out to all of our clients and I said, hey, look, this is, and I explained to them, because, we're transparent. We don't hide this sort of stuff. And I thought it was kind of funny, actually. So here's what you do. Go out and buy my book. It is $19.95, I think. You go buy my book. I will take $25 off of your next monthly bill, and I will also send you a $25 Starbucks gift card. So I'm basically paying $50 for everybody to buy my book. And I tell them, you have to buy it at this time. Send me the receipt. Sure enough, about 75 people that I saw bought the books, and I was an Amazon bestseller. Yay. Next year, MSP Survival Guide. And by the way, I really can't use it all that much because it's kind of silly. I actually wrote a blog article the next day explaining it. The MSP Survival Guide, I wasn't ready to do the same thing, so I just didn't. I just said, hey, it's for sale. But I went ahead and checked, and the first day, sure enough, I was an Amazon bestseller. I have no idea how many copies I sold for that first day or so. Well, now I'm getting curious. A third book comes out, and I basically tell people, hey, I've come out with this third book, but I'm not encouraging anybody to buy it yet. So I'm not marketing, I'm not doing whatever. But I tell some people it's coming out. Like, I'm an Amazon bestseller, third time. And I actually checked. And as far as I could tell, during the time I was an Amazon bestseller, I sold 7 copies. 7 copies of that book made me an Amazon bestseller. Come on. You think I'm cool, don't you? No, you don't. Bottom line is this. If you're talking about, you want that differentiator, you want that thing that helps you better define yourself as a content expert, a book can be done. It is a reasonable investment of time. The actual monetary investment that I made, and keep in mind, if you're talking about Amazon and doing self-publishing, you essentially have whoever's going to be, and by the way, Fiverr and all that are full of good graphic design artists who can help you with the actual covers and all of that kind of fun stuff. And if you need help finding someone, just reach out, let me know, put it in the comments or the like. It cost me about maybe $2,000, $2,500 per book in terms of editing costs, developing the covers, all that kind of fun stuff. I had to put it up on Amazon. From that point on, the only costs I have are covered because they're purchases. Okay? So the only costs I had are basically when people buy the book, I have to pay the expense costs, which is a whole different topic. And what we end up doing is we buy a couple hundred a year and then hand them out at trade shows, hand them out at wherever, because it's a differentiator. And am I kidding myself as far as how many people, especially the CEO Survival Guide? I will guess that maybe 1 to 5% of the people actually crack the book open and read it. But they know I wrote it. We actually talked to a potential client earlier this afternoon, and the person called us. They met us at a trade show. The president met us at a trade show. They're looking to change IT providers, and the person handed the guy who was given the responsibility to do the search, handed them a copy of my book and said, call these guys. He never read the book, but he kept it. and it was a differentiator. Maybe it could be for you. So the twist here is to quit thinking of a book as just something you're going to write because you wrote the book and now all the success you're going to have with the book. Think of it as a differentiator for you when you're talking with people, trying to impress people, trying to basically reinforce the idea that you're a content expert of some kind or another. It's easier than you think. I'm Bob Coppedge, BizTech Twists. Catch you later.